Hi, I'm Heather McLean, and this is the Alliance Against Northern Pass update. Today I'm standing with Terrace Cuckman in Concord along the PSNH right-of-way where they plan on building the Northern Pass right next to his house. And Terrace was interested in willing to talk to us about what PSNH plans to do with the land and the easement alongside his house. Terrace, do you want to explain when you bought this house and what you thought would happen with this easement, your perception of having an easement with PSNH?
Right. My wife and I, we moved here. We purchased the property in 1996. We had no naive expectations that with these power lines being here, that the demand for electricity wasn't going to go up over time. A number of things have happened since we moved here. What you can see, looking down the power lines, is you see the wooden towers right there. Those are the bone of contention now.
And how tall are they?
And they are 55 feet tall.
Okay.
What you see are monopoles. When we moved here in 1996, what you had were twin power line
and how
trips.
tall are those monopoles over there?
Those are 85 feet tall. So what we have here is a plan, I think, that was well crafted way back in 2007 when we received a letter from Northeast Utilities, and they informed us that the wooden poles on the eastern side of the right-of-way were going to be taken down, and they were going to be moved 25 feet outward on the right-of-way, and the 85-foot monopoles were going to go up. So we thought, well, what can we do about it? It's a right-of-way. What happened was they took down the wooden poles. They moved the monopoles out 25 feet, and then they continued to cut all the pines down that would have provided some kind of a threat to the power lines. And then what they did is they shear cut whatever trees were there, and ultimately just left the trees to rot right then and there.
Okay, so they didn't pick up any of their garbage, so to speak.
Correct. And frankly, I was looking at these cut trees for months until the undergrowth overtook those pines. For all I know, some of them may still be there, but the brush and the undergrowth has covered it up. So the plan now, in 2010, 11, 12, is that these wooden towers that you see here, the 55-footers, are coming down. And the entire line is being transferred 45 feet. Just to show, I mean, I put a little reflector over here to show where the power line is moving from to. So basically the center line is going to be running as you see it now.
And that'll be a 95-foot
85-foot
monopole?
85-foot monopole.
Okay.
Pretty much almost twins. Instead of having alternating sides, these are going to be all in line, inboard towards the right-of-way. So that was a little disturbing when I found that out, because I took a walk and I took 45 feet and I put that marker there, and then I said, okay, 55 feet up to 85 feet, where does that end up? Well, if we walk over this way,
oh, hold on, we better make sure that we get, I don't know if we, I'll walk over there. How does that sound?
Sure.
So you keep talking. So
All right.
all the way.
Right now where Heather's going, that is going to be the...
Right about here?
Okay. Right about there is where the PSNH right-of-way boundary is. And if you consider that the towers have moved 45 feet and you add another 30 feet, if a pole were to come down and fall down, where Heather's standing right now is where it would land. And that would be the fall zone. And frankly, my wife and I never imagined that an increased demand in power would subject us to that kind of risk. So I have a problem with PSNH doing anything that they want to do on their right-of-way while the risk would extend at least 30, 40 feet for me on my personal property.
So the implications are that they're going to take this to the close enough to the edge of your easement that it puts your house in danger of being in the fall zone, number one.
Yes.
Okay, which is disturbing. Okay, and the other thing is that these long-standing trees on your property are probably going to be clear-cut. So
Yes.
you will have absolutely no buffer between yourself and this giant line.
Correct.
And when you first bought the house, you actually had even more of a buffer. So they've continued to
Encroach.
remove that, and I think the point is that when people purchased the land, and not just you, but many of the people had no perception that they could build metal latticework towers,
And that's
which
what's
would be where the poles are right now.
right.
The Northern Pass latticework towers that can be anywhere from 85 to 135 feet.
Right.
And those are not going to be pretty.
Right.
And you'll have no buffer.
And from an electrical standpoint, I did due diligence. I borrowed a Gauss meter, and I patrolled the property. I took electrical readings directly under the towers.
Okay.
16 years ago, I got the readings that I got at one corner of my property, at another corner of my property. Then I took readings at the street, also in the corners, and then I also took measurements in the house. Those readings were 3.9 milligauss under the towers. This is June. If this project progresses any more, I'll pick the next June to take the same readings, but in June, before we closed, 3.9 milligauss, 3.9 milligauss, 0.9 milligauss at the street, and I was getting about 1.9 milligauss in the house. 1.9 milligauss is about what a microwave puts out 3 feet away. So, as far as I was concerned, that was an acceptable. That was an acceptable expectation. But now that the PSNH line is moving closer, and the Hydro Quebec lines are going to go with 3 times the capacity between these two towers. You've got 345 kilovolts coming down the middle. This one here is 115 kilovolts, as is the far one, 115. So what's coming down the middle is 3 times either of these. And I'd be interested to see what they say the electromagnetic flux is going to be when it comes through here. And that's just some of the concerns that we have going forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for speaking with us today.
Thank you, Heather.
It's very interesting
luck.
information. Well, good
All
luck
right.
to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, now I'm with Kelly Normandeau, not to be confused with Norman Doe, who is doing the environmental impact statement. Kelly has the Concord Equestrian Center, and she bought this house and this equestrian center 2 years ago.
2 years ago, yes.
And the week before she was closing on the house, she found out about the Northern Pass.
Correct.
Okay. And there was no disclosure or any of that kind of thing about the Northern Pass, and the real estate agent probably didn't even know about it at that point.
Right. When I questioned him, he said that he had no idea.
Right. Okay, and also the information that we're basing our calculations on is information derived from the scoping meetings and the website for the Northern Pass. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay, so Kelly is going to talk to us about what's going on with her easement and the Northern Pass.
Well, we purchased this property, like Heather said, a couple of years ago, and we have based our livelihood and my home and my lifestyle is all engulfed in this property. And as it stands currently with the poles that we have here, it's a workable situation. You know, we use it for our horse pastures, and that's all fine and dandy. But if you see where the cone is behind Heather, that is where the new tower, or the new monopole is going to be. And then that's going to directly affect our riding ring here.
So that's going to affect this whole riding ring,
Yes.
because a new monopole, which is the existing 2-pole tower, is going to move over 45 feet.
Correct.
Okay, and then the easement is approximately along these logs.
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. And then the fall zone is back where that other cone is, just in back of my daughter's swing set. So not only would that be affecting my personal property, but also the turnout situations that we have in down and back here. And it's really going to be something that is going to be a crippling situation for my business. And as it stands currently, we are taxed in all regular Concord taxation right now. None of this is in current use, and we really don't have any break from hosting this situation on our property.
So you pay
currently.
taxes for all this land,
yes.
even though PSNH is using it and is going to be taking it over.
Right, right.
Okay.
And this property's original owner back in the day was Lester Spear, who was a horse person as well. And I cannot imagine that he would have entered into a situation of getting the right-of-way with PSNH had he known the magnitude of what was actually coming down the pike with that. He actually had donated the land behind, so it's conservation land. It's the Spear Community Trailway system. So it's all marked trails for the use of residents. It's non-motorized vehicles. And I haven't been approached by any Northern Pass people. However, the no Northern Pass signs that I have put out by the road all get taken down.
Really?
Oh, yes.
How does
And
that happen?
I don't know. It's mysterious.
Just magically
Yes,
go away.
They go away. But the Department of Energy has been here because it's wet on either side of where the turnouts are. It's very wet there, and that whole front end of the power lines to the road is also very wet. If you go out there right now, it's not, well, with the rain, it's not so bad, but during the spring, fall, there's always seepage going on through there. My well also will be in the new territory that they're going to be planning. And, you know, for a state that is live free or die, I think that it's really imperative that we really all get behind this situation and take a look at what the cost is going to be. And I understand totally about the job situation, that's what the Northern Pass and Northeast Utilities and PSNH are saying is going to be created, but that's all going to be a temporary situation. What they're putting up here is permanence, and it's permanently affecting people's livelihoods, their lifestyles, their way of lives, their health. At one of the scoping meetings, somebody had brought up the fact that there hasn't been any testing on the water from people's wells being affected by, the electromagnetic current. And that would be something that I'd be really interested in, because my well, is going to be right in their way. And so it's really a concern, and I think that if anything, if we're coming from Canada, we have state roads that run to Canada, that if our state is so gung-ho on this and it's going to be such a fantastic thing for everybody in the state, that why can't we then put it on the state property of the side of the highways? Going to Deerfield, you take Route 101 straight out there. So what is all this malarkey of having to cut through people's lands and you have no say and this is what's happening,
we know
whether
why
you
this
like
is.
it or not? Oh, absolutely.
It's the money.
It is.
PSNH, I should say Northeast Utilities made the deal with Hydro-Quebec, and they utilized the PSNH easement, and that's all about an incestuous deal to keep all the money.
Absolutely.
If New Hampshire thinks they're going to benefit from it, they would benefit from it only if it goes underground. Then the state will get the money. PSNH won't.
Right.
Right.
But we're being pretty much used
That's right.
to assist other states that don't want these monstrosity power lines going through their section. Like Connecticut isn't really a big proponent of having the interruption in their scenic beauty, but evidently New Hampshire doesn't seem to be quite as important as a state as that, because we're simple people here that are very hardworking, but you know, I think that when we all get together that we're definitely a force to be reckoned with.
That's right. And I also wanted to mention that, you know, they're going to move that monopole over, and then they're going to put the metal latticework tower in the middle of the two monopoles.
Right. A giant
Giant
rod.
towers. You know, and we are estimating anywhere from 85 to 135 foot tall tower.
Yeah.
So we don't even know, you know, you can't even conceive what that's going to look like and how that's going to affect your grazing area.
Right, and this is all in a standstill of any renovations that we're planning, because I can't justify putting money into something that is in jeopardy of being demolished.
Right. Well, thank you, Kelly, so much for talking with us today, and the best of luck to you.
Thanks very much, and also thank you, Brian Tilton and 1077 The Pulse, because that is the only way that I had heard about any of this, and I really encourage everybody to listen.
Right on. We like Brian. Hi, I'm with Jack Savage from the Forest Society now, and Jack, I wanted to ask you about the scoping meetings and how you felt those went, and some of the thoughts that you had on those.
Sure. As I think many of your viewers probably know, the purpose of the scoping hearings was to allow the Department of Energy to hear from the public here in New Hampshire about what should be included in the environmental impact statement that will need to be prepared in analyzing various options for Northern Pass in preparation for the potential issuing of a presidential permit for crossing the international boundary. The EIS, as it's called, is important because it will likely also inform other decision-making in permitting for this project. For example, the Site Evaluation Committee is ultimately the statewide body that will determine whether or not this project gets a permit to be built and how it might be built. And so they will likely rely on what's in this EIS. So it's an important opportunity for us here in New Hampshire to be able to tell the DOE what they should study as part of that EIS. From the Forest Society standpoint, we wanted to make it very clear that the EIS should include, in fact we think that there's an obligation for the EIS to include, some analysis of alternatives to the proposed overhead line.
Right.
And in fact, Jane Diffley, our President Forester, testified at the hearing in Concord that the EIS should include at least two alternatives that feature complete burial of the line, preferably along transportation corridors. It would appear that this is a viable option. It's an option that, in spite of what Northern Pass says, is not necessarily too expensive and would address many of the concerns the Forest Society and others have relative to the impact of overhead lines on the landscape. What was really remarkable about the hearings, so 4 hearings across 4 days in a week, was the number of people who turned out. Some 2,000 people showed up. It was very clear from those wearing orange and the comments in the crowd that they were overwhelmingly opposed to Northern Pass. And what I find interesting about that is that 2.5 years ago, there were a similar set of scoping hearings held here in New Hampshire. There were 7 at the end of March 2011, in which the same thing happened. Overwhelming opposition from every corner of the state. They came out and said, look, we don't want this, we don't need this, and you should take a look at whether or not it's needed at all. And we heard many, many, many of the same kinds of comments from, in fact, an expanded group of people.
Yes.
There were also some very specific comments that I thought were very helpful for the EIS, comments from Conservation Commission members, comments from people representing school boards, from select boards, etc., asking the DOE to look about the whole host of potential problems with this project. In my mind, Northern Pass is worse off today than they were 2.5 years ago. Today we have a governor who's made it clear through her op-ed in the Boston Globe that she's drawing something of a line in the sand relative to the potential impact on the White Mountain National Forest, and
Thank you.
calling for alternatives to be looked at, and making it clear to her fellow governors in New England that New Hampshire is not going to be a doormat for the rest of the region as they seek to solve their renewable energy dreams by overrunning New Hampshire. And so it raises the question of whether or not Northern Pass has any chance politically of pursuing this overhead option. I would argue that as of today that it looks like an extremely steep cliff to climb for Northern Pass to get permitted as proposed. And from the Forest Society's standpoint, I think it's time for our political leaders to take a look at making the right thing easy. Going forward and looking at those transportation corridors that might be appropriate places to site an underground line, and create a process by which any transmission developer, not just Northern Pass, can come forward, go to the state and say, look, we want to build a transmission line, we want to do it the right way, we want to be innovative, we want to use the latest technology in order to move electricity from one place to another, and we think we can do it in a cost-effective way, and not make the state bureaucracy or state political process something that gets in the way of that, but in fact something that fosters that. And I think that's what we're starting to see over across the river in Concord, is a move towards creating a situation where transmission developers can more easily go forward and do the right thing.
I would say Jeannie Forrester has done a lot in that direction.
Sure, certainly coming out of her chairing the SB 361 Commission a year ago and continuing that work. It was very interesting to hear Senator Jeb Bradley's comments at the hearing in Plymouth, in which it would appear that he's taking what many people think is a different stand, but certainly it's a much more vocal stand against Northern Pass as proposed, and looking at burial as an option. You know, I think he's starting to get it, and I think that's what we're seeing happen, is more and more people are starting to get it and saying, like the Forest Society has, is that there may or may not be some value in allowing Hydro-Quebec to export more of this energy to the southern New England market, where the demand is. And we still need to take a look at what the impact of that would be on our energy markets and so forth. But in the event that there is some value in that, we need to do it the right way. We need to look at burial. We need to make that able to happen in the best way.
Agreed. And I also want to just put it out there that I was impressed with Maggie Hassan's op-ed in the Boston Globe as well. And I wish she had done it in New Hampshire too. It made it to New Hampshire, however, you know. Right. But it was interesting. And so the other thought that I'm having is that we did some interviews with a couple of property owners in Concord who were not approached by PSNH. However, they went to the scoping meetings and they went onto the Northern Pass website to assess what kind of implications it would have on their land. And it wasn't good. And so I wanted to ask you, how can the Northern Pass project encroach on these easements? How much power do they have to just come in and rip down, you know, walls of trees and, you know?
Right. So that's an interesting question. They're proposing to use an extension portion of what's generally referred to as existing right-of-way.
Okay.
It's existing distribution line right-of-way. It's right-of-way that was acquired by ratepayers in order to allow electricity to be delivered to homes. It was not necessarily acquired in order to build a third-party private transmission line for the exclusive use of Hydro-Quebec. And therein lies one interesting question. Can Northern Pass LLC, or Northern Pass Transmission, a private company, license a right-of-way that was acquired by ratepayers' funds to Hydro-Quebec? Can they do that? And if they do that, what would any payments, rental payments or so forth, where would those go? That's a very interesting question. I think it's a question that the Forest Society has asked our attorneys to look into, and I think you can count on hearing more about that going forward. There's another more specific issue with regards to the existing right-of-ways, and we've heard from a number of people along the existing right-of-way who, within their specific deed, because a right-of-way will be found in your deed,
Yep.
is the access, the right-of-way that's being granted restricts height restriction, for example. That the towers within that right-of-way can be no higher than 60 feet, for
Okay.
example, very specific place. And so the issue then becomes, can Northern Pass, can PSNH grant to Northern Pass the ability to put towers in that right-of-way that would be higher than 60 feet? Well, I think from a legal standpoint, you could argue that in fact they don't. The PSNH could not do such a thing, and that's a problem that PSNH hasn't acknowledged particularly.
Absolutely.
And going
Agreed,
forward.
yep.
Similar restrictions on width of the right-of-way.
Yes.
In some places the right-of-way is quite wide, over 250 feet. Other places it's quite narrow,
Yep.
150 feet or less. And to the extent, in order to squeeze in this private line, they may have a problem and would need to widen the right-of-way, and without access to eminent domain, it would appear that they would have to get a landowner to grant them additional width in order to squeeze that in. In some cases, they achieve the objective by proposing to go much higher than the existing towers, which creates a different kind of problem.
Okay, but then you're looking into fall zones.
Well, that gets into something else. You know, if the tower should fall over,
Where will it land?
Where will it land? And,
Yeah.
and will it land within the width of the right-of-way? Will it land outside of the width of the right-of-way? If it's outside the width of the right-of-way, will it land on someone's house or other property? What kind of problems does that cause? It's why I think, as one person who testified before the DOE pointed out, there have been previous proposals in which this right-of-way was to be used for transmission, specifically through the White Mountain National Forest, in which it was determined that it was simply not a suitable existing right-of-way for this kind of transmission. We can hope that the Department of Energy will take that into consideration as they examine the overhead alternative in comparison to other alternatives, including the no-build alternative.
I like a no-build alternative, as well as the underground. I can handle that. Okay, well, thank you so much, Jack. As always, full of information if you want to donate to the Forest Society in their efforts to fight the Northern Pass and their other conservation projects. You can tell them where to go.
Sure, if you go to our website, www.forestsociety.org, you can find everything you need to know about Northern Pass and about some other really exciting projects we have, including our current effort to protect some of the trails on Mount Major and other parts of the Belknap Mountains, one of the most popular hikes in New Hampshire. This time of year, it's a perfect time to go up and hike to Mount Major, look out over Lake Winnipesaukee, see the beautiful foliage and so forth.
Okay, well, thanks. You're always on our side, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you, Heather.
More updates soon. Hi, I'm with Alan Merrill, and we are in Holderness right now, and we are at a parcel of land that is going to be affected by the Northern Pass project. Alan, you've been living here for 62 years?
40 some odd years, but I'm 62.
42. Oh, you're 62.
67.
Yeah.
Live down
Okay.
next door.
And the Northern Pass has a right-of-way through your land,
Yes, they do.
and they've always had it?
They've always had it, yes.
Okay. However, during that time span, you've been able to add on to your house.
Oh, we've added on, lived here. We've been here 40 some odd years right here
Okay.
on this piece of land.
And you've always gotten permission to add on to your
Yes.
house. And when you first move in here, it's a very lovely, you have a really lovely piece of land. And there are some mature trees over here. Behind us, which you'll see later, are some beautiful fruit trees. And when you look at this wire coming through here, it doesn't really look, it doesn't look bad.
No,
it's fine.
down below the trees.
It's down below the trees and it's wooden.
Yep.
Now the Northern Pass decides they're going to build the towers, and they came to visit you. Is that correct?
Yes, they
Okay,
did.
so what did they tell you?
Well, they told me that you don't mind if we take some pictures of what's going on around here, and I said, I don't mind, go ahead. Like this. And so they went and done all kinds of pictures, and they told me that my dog fence had to go. My underground tunnel, that would have to go for my dogs to come in and out. The trees, they've got to be cut out of the right of way.
All those trees.
Some of my garage, that's got to come down. Piece of my swimming pool, that's got to go. And I didn't, huh? And piece of the kitchen. And also ground my garage or something. I don't
Yeah,
know
so
what.
they
I
want
don't
you to-
understand all this stuff anyhow.
Okay, so,
From them.
and they didn't really offer you any solution to what was going on. They just told you what was going to happen? Is that?
No, they didn't
kinda-
offer us nothing.
Okay.
No.
So they haven't offered you anything?
No.
Okay, and they just told you you're going to have to lose part of your garage, lose part of your pool, lose part of your kitchen,
Yes.
lose all your trees,
Right.
change your whole dog.
Dog deals here.
Deal.
You know, my fence, I took down most of that already, but I guess I shouldn't have.
And then ground your garage.
Yes,
Okay.
some special grounding on a garage, but we had the dog fence grounded. We had an electrician do that, and it's
Okay.
quite
So
expensive to do all this stuff.
you've cooperated with the Northern
Yes,
Pass.
yes, we have.
Okay. And the point to this is to show how much of an impact the Northern Pass is going to have on people along the line.
Yeah.
And you never in your wildest dreams, I'm sure, thought that these giant towers were going to somehow come through here.
No, we never did.
Yeah.
And who wants to look at them iron-looking rigs? But I hope they never get it through, really.
Me too.
We don't need it. We don't need it.
And maybe, this would be a case where I would think, and this is my opinion, that you've been given permission all these years to utilize the land in the way that you've used it.
That's right.
With no problems at all, and then suddenly they want to take it all apart. So I would think that they would have to compensate you.
I would think so.
I would think so. It doesn't make sense
mean,
otherwise.
This used to be all grown up, all trees and all this and everything when we first moved here. We cut
Okay.
everything, made it into fields, kept it mowed, kept it down,
Yeah, it's really pretty.
the whole work. And then have somebody come along and do all this.
Yeah.
I don't think it's right. We don't need it, we don't want it. Get them out of here and keep them out.
Right, so
Yeah.
this is an example of what Northern Pass customer relations. Woohoo! Give us a call. It's called customer outreach, I think, and they
There
are
you go.
here to tell you that you're going to remove your garage, you're going to have to do this, you're going to have to do that, and they haven't offered you nothing.
No,
Okay.
they haven't.
That's an
Okay.
example of customer outreach by PSNH in the Northern Pass. Thank you for talking
Okay.
to us.
Thank you.
Any more thoughts?
No.
Okay. Awesome.
Oh, boy.
All right, we're going to show you the example of the land where it's going to be beyond this, and then some of the other trees that are going to have to come down.
See, we took down.
And they're going to fit the towers in. They're going to fit these towers somehow in here, which
Right.
I
Right
don't
up
know.
close here, though, just they're going. I don't know where they're going, really.
Yeah, because they'll consolidate that pole, and then,
They took the windmill power and posted this power. Put them extra poles in up there.
Oh, okay.
You know, for the sagging, because they heat more. And I didn't know, they shut that down for 2 weeks.
I note that all these trees that I'm
Yeah.
panning by now are all gonna probably have to come down, every one of them. All of this will be clear cut.
Area and stay here, and I think that they pictures they will too.
Yeah, I'm sure they
We
are.
had a big sign up on
Yeah.
graduates saying no northern pass.
I got one on my shed door, and we got one beside the road up there.
I loved it when they had the meeting down to Plymouth at Silver Hall here a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
Uh,
You don't want that on.
No, I mean,
When
Yeah.
they had
I
the meeting,
don't-
we saw a girl down there, and she was taking all the green signs down that was for the northern pass. We found out afterwards she took it and had a big burn pile out of it.
yes, she did. Right with the